All right, thank you again for attending today's guided tour. Throughout this session, if you have any questions, feel free to post them in the GoToMeeting question area. This is developed just to be a high-level overview of the platform, so if you're brand new to iFormBuilder, this is perfect for you. We also have other resources available to you and to support you as far as if you are a little bit more advanced with the iFormBuilder and if I need to go into more detail or if you have more questions. Again, feel free to set any questions in the GoToMeeting, as well as after this session, I'll send you an email, and if you have any questions about the material I covered, I can answer those then. All right, and if for any reason you can't hear me, please let me know, or if it's not coming in as clearly, that'd be very helpful, so hopefully I'm just not talking to myself. All right, to start, iFormBuilder is a mobile data collection platform. That being said, the way that it works is that you create your forms on the web portal, so at iFormBuilder.com. Some of you who may be joining us may have a dedicated database, and so you may be logging into something like training.iFormBuilder.com. But that's your first step, going into the web portal. That's where you'll create your forms, that's where you can assign your forms, as well as customize the client side. So what you view on the app, you can set up that functionality within the web portal. Once you've created your forms and you've assigned your forms to your users, the next step is to collect. The collection process happens on your devices. We are iOS and Android device compatible. So iOS is either your iPad, your iPod, your iPhone. Those are all the iOS operating systems. We are compatible with all of those as well as any of the Android devices. If you're looking for some other kind of compatibility that we're not currently with, feel free to make some suggestions to us. We're always looking to see what our users are looking for. The third step here with the iFormBuilder process is to consume your data. So once your users collected your data, you're able to view that data in the web portal again, as well as export it. If you are planning on pushing that data into an internal system, that happens during your step 3 as well. So here's a quick map of the process again. That first step in the create process is you log into iFormBuilder.com, you create your forms, and then you assign your forms. That second process with the collection is to log into the iForm app and sync the device. So one thing I didn't mention earlier is if you're brand new to the platform and you haven't even downloaded the app, you can do this through the Google Play Store as well as the Apple App Store. And you do want to make sure that you download that app before you're out in the field trying to collect data, because you can't always guarantee that you're going to have either phone access or Wi-Fi access. So that's why we suggest to do that before you're in an area where it may be spotty. The fifth step here is to collect the data using the iForm app. One thing that's amazing about the iFormBuilder platform is you don't need to have Wi-Fi connection to be able to collect data. So if you know you're going to be in an area where you may not have any connectivity, be sure to sync your iForm app prior to going out in the field. That way you can have the most up-to-date form on your device, and you can fill out all the information and it'll save until you have better connection and you're able to sync your device back to the cloud, which goes into step 6, which is syncing the device. Step 7 here is to view and consume data at iFormBuilder.com. One little note here that we have is that you can export data via views, feeds, and post or API, but the API is only available to users that have a dedicated database. So one way to think about that, or one way to figure out if you have a dedicated database, is are you logging into iFormBuilder.com or are you going to a different server name? If you're going to a different server name, then you do have a dedicated database and your organization does have access to the API. If you're interested in moving forward and upgrading to that dedicated database, that can be purchased through the growing plan. And that, we have multiple people on our team that'd be happy to go through with you what the process is as far as upgrading to that growing plan. So that first step is creating the forms in iFormBuilder. We have a couple things that we want to make sure that you're thinking about before you even start creating your forms. And one of them being is, what devices will the end users be using in the field? This is important to think because, of course, depending on if they're using an Android or iOS system, it may depend on what kind of elements you place in your form. Our iOS platform has been available a lot longer than our Android platform. Our Android platform is just as strong, but it's still missing one or two element input types. So make sure you think about that prior to building out your forms. The second decision that we have here is there a need to integrate with hardware? Have you even thought about that yet? While you're building your form, iFormBuilder does integrate with different pieces of hardware. And so instead of having the user constantly inputting data, you might want to allow them to scan a barcode. And that's something you'll have to think about before building out your form as well. Our third form building decision here is, what naming convention do you use for your form and your option list? Now, if you haven't even started building a form yet, then you probably haven't thought about using a naming convention, which is actually kind of good, because we want to make sure that when you start with the form building process right away, you start building a naming convention. And I'll be showing you my iFormBuilder account to show you what my naming convention is, and maybe you can get some ideas off of that as well. Our next form building decision here is, how should you structure your form? Are there going to be subforms? If you're unsure what subforms are, it's essentially a different form that you're connecting to what we call a parent form. And so that way you're able to create different sections within the form and make the user experience a little bit easier, as well as segmenting the data. The next form building decision is, which of the 42 element input types do you use for each question? So I know your goal here is to cut down on human error, so make sure that you're aware of the different element input types that are available to you and what ones would help you depending on what kind of question you're asking. Then the next form building decision here is, where can I add form functionality? aka smart controls, to cut down on the human error. So what's great about the iFormBuilder platform is that we have this section in the form builder called smart controls. With the smart controls, you're able to use JavaScript and create these statements to help customize the user's experience in their form. So maybe you want to make sure that you only show an element based off of that user's selection in an option list. You're able to do that through our smart controls and through basic JavaScript. Now, if you're not familiar with JavaScript and you're a little overwhelmed with me even saying that, do not fret. The JavaScript is very easy, and in our help desk, we do have a lot of documentation on how to add some of that functionality within your form. So here on our list, are there any questions before I go on to that next section? Okay, I'll take the silence as a no. Or if any questions come in, just please post them in there, and I'll be sure to answer them. So earlier I did mention that you have to build for the device type, as well as you want to build for your smallest device. So building for the device type is that first step, just knowing your audience. Are they going to be using Android devices, or are they going to be using iOS devices? Building for the smallest device is a little bit different. What you have to keep in mind with your form building is how it looks for the user experience on that smallest device. So it's always going to look great on the larger devices. So if you're using a tablet or if you're using an iPad, it'll always look great there. But you want to make sure that you have on that smallest device that it still is looking fluid there. Some errors or some visual differences would be if you're choosing to use what we call a select option list, which is essentially buttons on your form. If you have larger or longer text in those select options. It may look fine on your iPad or your tablet, but once you look in your iPhone or on your Android phone, it might be a little harder to read. So make sure that you're first viewing it on the smallest device. At the bottom of this page is a link to our help desk article that discusses the differences between our iOS and Android devices as far as the form builder goes and what element input types are available with each operating system. Okay, before we go any further, I am now going to bring up my form builder account to show you a little bit of what it looks like in that first step. So that first step that we're in, which is that collect process. So here I am just at iFormBuilder.com. I do suggest stopping by here every so often. I know a lot of you will just jump right into and log in to sign in here, but we do update our website, and it will give you some more information about the platform. Another great place to look for information on the platform is our blog. You can see what we're up to, as well as if we have any new releases. We might want to showcase those in our blog, as well as some of our customers. We love to put a spotlight on them. There's also the Learn More section. In the Learn More section, this is where you can go into the iFormBuilder help desk. And once you're over there, you can either go to our Get Started area, our help desk, which is a list of all the articles that we have within our Customer Success Center, as well as our community. Our community is a great place to learn from other people who are using the platform, as well as a great place to post some ideas and some suggestions that you have as far as the platform. Beneath that, we have our release notes. So if you want to make sure you're up to date on what's going on with the platform, this is a very good place to be looking. And then lastly, which I love the most, is our iFormBuilder Academy. Here at our iFormBuilder Academy, you have a list of we have our Getting Started guide. This is, if you haven't downloaded this, I strongly suggest doing so. But we also have our free iFormBuilder training sessions, which includes our schedule and our recordings. So if you go there, here's a list of all of the upcoming training sessions that we have, as well as all the previous training sessions that we've had. So maybe you missed one and you want to go into a specific topic, then those are all listed there. But going back to our collection process, let's sign into our account. The first thing you notice when you sign in is the data. Now this is our step 3 of the process, so we're going to look at this in a little bit later. So our first step is just to create, so we can create within our FormBuilder account. I also want you to notice that we do have this little orange box at the bottom that says Contact Us. So if you have any questions, or you're running into any errors, or if you're ever confused, or if you want to know about a good pizza place around the area, just send us a little message and we'd be happy to help. Okay, so now that we're in our FormBuilder account, I first want you to notice that I do have a naming convention put in place here. So here I have, you'll see that I have the JCR multiple site login parent, and then the different child forms beneath that. I also have a great example is here, which is Spooky Nook small group _10 athlete sign in parent. So this is that first form that my user will see. Then the child form is that subform that's attached to this form. So that's where the naming convention really comes into play. So for here, I'm going to create a new form. This form label is what the user is going to see on their device, while the table name is what I want to make sure I have a naming convention for. So I'll say guided tour, December. Now, as you can see, I have checked off the based on label, but because I want to make sure I have a naming convention, I'm going to uncheck that and do _P, or I can do _parent to just go along with my naming convention. Next, I have a description. And this is what the user, if you're using an iOS device, then the user will be able to see that description with the most current version of iForm. The icons here are what you can, what will be available to you, or are available to use as the default icons for your form, but you can also use a URL. So if there's a specific image that's online and you want to use that instead, then you can place that URL within that section. Next, we have the reference IDs. We have a lot of documentation on this, and so I'm not going to go too far into it, but the reference IDs are great as far as customization for your form as well. Just going to save my changes, and now I'm in the form builder. Here is the label is what the user is going to see on their device, and the data column name is, it's almost like that table name that you had when you were first building the form. This is where if you want to use a naming convention, you can do that, but this is also, the user won't see the data column name. So this is just for your information, and it's also for using, you'll use the data column name if you start to use smart controls. Now from this, I'm just going to bring up a form that I've previously created to just show you some aspects of the Form Builder platform. Just bear with me as I bring that up. Okay, at this time, you should be able to see my screen here. So for this instance, let's pretend that we've already created our form, we've assigned our form, and now we're in that collection process. So I've already downloaded the device, or I've already downloaded the app to this device. I want to make sure that I sync my device just so that I have the most current version of the form. And up here where you see end user training, that's a customization option that you have, and that can be found when you are in, let me just move this over a little bit. You're in the iFormBuilder, if you go under company info, under company info you have the client customization section. That's where you can decide what's being shown up here where it says end user training, as well as what color you have on the background. And more options are available to you there. Okay, so now I'm going to just open one of my forms. Now here you'll notice there's a little information button. By selecting that, it'll give me that description that we wrote in that form builder. So for your users, they're able to see what the form's about before they even open the form. Now that I've selected the open, I do have a little icon up top. So this is what a lot of companies will do is if they wanted to add some kind of branding, they'll place their logo up top. And the form that I'm in right now, I created for smart controls. So I've used smart controls throughout this form. And it'll just show you some of the possibility that you have available to you when you're building out your forms or when you're using the platform. Okay, so here we have, in this form, I placed my name and my last name. I've also done the date of birth. And then that field underneath, it concatenated those fields together. So the user, even though those are all separate answers by the user, it can be located all in one element. We also have this great tool that we call, it's called client validation, and it's in the smart controls, and you're able to add functionality to occur so that depending on what the user places will depend on if an error message shows up. So here I have next scheduled visit. If I select a time, if I just select today, then I receive an error message, and that error message tells me that I had to select a day in the future. So now I'm going to select a day a month from now, and that error message no longer shows up. Underneath that, we have an option list. So this is a select option list. So earlier I mentioned to you about how you want to make sure the text that you have in your select option list is shorter so that when you're looking at a smaller device, it still looks nice and is still readable or legible. I chose to use icons for this. You don't need to use icons though. So based on this question, you'll notice will depend on if other fields are being shown to the user. So with no or non-applicable, then I can just move on to my next question. But by selecting yes, I'm given 3 more fields that I need to fill in. So one of these is a text area, and I'll just say that we'll say a lamp was broken. And based off of that response, I used a dynamic label underneath. This is does the lamp need to be replaced or repaired? And again, this is a select option list, and I've defaulted it to send an email to my supervisor, which in this case is just me. Now, I'm not going to complete this form. We do have a whole session, a recorded session on smart controls, and so you can see in a little bit more detail how I added this functionality. But let's just pretend I'm out in the field. I finished completing this form. I'm just going to select done. Oh, apparently I didn't select a date in the future. Oh yeah, I didn't. I selected 2014. So now, because that was a required field, it wouldn't let me submit my form. Let's say that I've done that. I'm going to sync my device again. And once this is done syncing, all that information is now being sent to the cloud, and I'll get a report saying that the record was uploaded successfully. And at this point, I would be able to go into my iFormBuilder account and view the data for that specific form. So I'm just going to jump over because we've created our form, we've assigned our form. Now we've collected data using the form, and we want to view that data. We want to consume that data. So earlier I said this is the first screen you'll always see when you log in. The forms that you'll see here are all the forms that you've been given view rights to. So when you add new users, you'll see that you have the option to give a user or when you assign forms, you'll be able to assign the user to collect data, and that will just give them access to input data on their device. Or you can also give them the permission to view the data. By giving them the permission to view the data, they'll be able to see it here. So here are all the forms that I've been given view rights for. Just going to select one of these that I know that I have some data in. What I just did is I selected the ID of that form, and here's a list view of all the different details for the data collected. But maybe I want to look into a specific record. I can do that by selecting the ID. And this gives me a nice view of the data that I collected on this day. I can also, if I wanted to, I could view this as a PDF. If you are looking to be able to share this PDF with users, once you're viewing it as a PDF, you're also able to save it and then share it with anyone else that you need to. But that's just one way to export the data. The other ways that I wanted to make sure I noted with you today is our views as well as our feeds. So here are the different views, views that you have. So you can have it in the list view, a map view. You can view all the option lists in a graph. You have the HTML. You also have Excel and Excel flat. And the last one here is the scoring. Now, scoring is a great functionality that we have within iFormBuilder, and you'd have to first give your option list scoring values before you'd be able to see a report for scoring. The next thing we have over here is our feeds. These differ because these include the metadata, as well as they also include the data column names that you have for the form fields. So earlier when we were building out a form, you had that label and the data column name. The label is what the user will see on their device, and it's also what you'll see in these views, whereas the data column name is what you'll have in the feeds. We have multiple options here for you to export your data. A lot of times what people will do is if they're giving the Excel file to a customer or a client, then they'll want to make sure that they have the label, and so that would be a view. And then the feeds are really for the number crunching, and if you're integrating your data with any other system, then you'll probably want to use the feed as well. Another way to enhance your form builder and using the form builder platform is under the form assignment. We also give you the option for each form that you create, you can assign a post data. So what this does, if you're unfamiliar with it, is you're able to add a new endpoint, and that endpoint can be another web service that you are using, and they'll give you a custom URL for that. And then once you set up and assigned your endpoint here, then what it'll do is it'll automate your workflow, and instead of you having to go and download the Excel file or the Excel feed, you're able to post the data to your web service, and it'll automate that process, so you won't have to do that after every record. It'll just do that on its own. Okay, so let's go back into this process. So we've created our forms, then you have to create your users and assign the users to the forms. One thing I didn't mention to you is that not only are you able to create users, but you're able to place those users in user groups. Those user groups allow you to fast pace your process and your assignment process by just putting all users who are going to have access to the same forms into a user group. So instead of selecting each user individually, you only have to select the user group to assign them to a form. We also have form groups. And so again, this is another way that you can cut down on some of the time that you're spending as an admin. So what you're able to do is you'd be able to first go under your form assignment, select a form group that you've previously created with however many forms that you placed in there. And then you're able to take that form group and assign that to a user group. So potentially you could have 20 users in your user groups, and each one of them would need 20 forms. And now instead of going in and checking each box, so roughly 40 clicks, you're now down to 2 clicks. So it definitely can help enhance your the way that you spend your time. Okay, so now that you created the form and the users, and you collect your data, and then you consume it. Like I mentioned, there's the views, there's the feeds, there's the assigned post. If you're looking to have it in a report, you can do the email or the PDF. And then lastly, you do have API access with a dedicated database. Okay, so that's our guided tour. Hopefully you were able to really understand the platform. There's so many different functionalities with it, and I can't stress enough how helpful our implementation support is, as well as our customer success center. So if you are working on this and you do have a quick question, feel free to drop that question in the chat, as well as if maybe you're new and to get the ball rolling, you'd like us to build out some of your first forms.